Hey everyone, so this is my review of Will, Season 1, Episode 5, called The Marriage of True Minds. And essentially what this episode is about is that an unexpected arrival of Will's family sort of puts him in a very uncomfortable situation. And Marlo goes to very great lengths and goes through a whole bunch of spiritual realizations and stuff that really makes him sort of confront his past. And Todcliffe comes closer to deciphering the message that puts Will in a life or death sort of situation if it's uncovered that that letter was once belonged to him. And this was a really interesting and entertaining episode that was really more of an episode that was sort of its own thing that really didn't quite fit into this main broader story. It was more just itself that kind of had some tie-ins to sort of fit to the broader story, but it was mostly its own thing. And that was just really interesting to see. And to finally fully meet Will's family, and as well as Todcliffe's family was also introduced in this episode. So to meet those two families and see how those families somewhat integrated into the lives of Will and Todcliffe as they sort of developed more and more on their own, and now their families have come back, so they don't really know what to do on either end, and that was interesting to see both Todcliffe and Will deal with that. And just all the moments with Will dealing with his family's sudden arrival was interesting to see him want his family there and want to be with his family, but also still wanting to sort of have his family leave so that he can go back to the life he had in London and being a writer and being by himself and being with Alice. So that was interesting to see him sort of try and outweigh and figure out which is more important to him. And with that, seeing Will want his family to stay around and want all this happiness that he wants in his life to stay there, and dealing with the fact of having Anne around and Alice dealing with having Anne around and putting that strenuous relationship between Alice and Will, and then Anne actually finding out that Alice is being with Will, so Will's cheating on Anne, and just having all that mess and chaos going around was just interesting to see how Will sort of dealt with it all. And then with Todcliffe's kids and them actually fully seeing what it is that their father does for a day, and them sort of witnessing and experiencing and reacting to it, was just really interesting to see how that sort of put almost a strain on Todcliffe and his family, because they don't know really how bad it was of what their father did until they saw it. So that was interesting to see, and I'm kind of curious to see where that might put Todcliffe and his family in the future if they're ever actually shown again. And the little beggar boy made an appearance again in this episode, and I'm still just so annoyed by him, because he seems such an unimportant character. And yes, in this episode they somewhat have tried to make a connection between him and Will, to give him some sort of importance, that now the theater group thinks that this little beggar boy is Will's nephew. But still, that just made no sense and really didn't make any kind of lasting connection in my mind to keep him around. And just this little boy that I can't remember the name of just seems so annoying and so unimportant to the story that I just don't know why they keep bringing him around. Besides the fact that he knows Will's main secret, but even that isn't all that important in my mind. Then all the scenes with Marlo were really interesting, with him going through all these different things to try and find inspiration or find something to sort of cure his blank mind and his struggling sort of desires and stuff like this. That was very interesting to see him going through all these much darker and darker and darker things that sort of took him on this whole adventure to somewhat of confront the things that he needs to confront probably in the next episode. So I'm curious to see how that's all going to go down the next episode, with how this episode sort of ended with him. And just with how this episode ended for Will, I'm very curious to see how the story's going to progress with him trying to balance on that line between being with his family and doing what's best for his family, as well as continuing on the struggle to become a successful writer. So I'm curious to see how that's all gonna go about happening and where they're gonna take that story. And just overall, this was such an interesting and entertaining episode that was a really good episode on its own, but not a great episode in like the whole broader story. So yeah, that's my review of Will, Season 1, Episode 5, called Marriage of True Minds. So yeah, bye!